The topic of this video is simple. We are going to make it so that our NPC, as they're looping through all those waypoints, they have the option to pause at each place along their path. So here I have my NPC that is just perfectly looping through all of his waypoints, and we need to make it so that they can pause, right? One of the things when we're looking at the script that's going to be a problem is that this coroutine is being called every single frame, right? It's being called an update, which is running like 60 to 100 frames a second. So this coroutine is being started hundreds and hundreds of times. This is going to be an issue if we want to be able to pause. We need to engineer some way so that this coroutine only gets called one time. At the moment we're entering our not alert state, it gets called once and not again. So one easy way to sort of do this, I know it's not ideal, but here, I'm going to delete these comments. One easy way to stop this coroutine is through bool logic. So if we had a bool that we could wrap around this start coroutine, check if our state has recently been changed to not alert, and only if that bool is true, then we call this coroutine. That's one way to do it. I know there's other ways, but we're just gonna do it the cheap, easy way using a bool. So I'm gonna go up here and we're gonna create a private bool called state changed. And by default, this will be false. So let's go into our start method and let's say state changed equals true. So now we can wrap an if statement around our coroutine here. And this if is going to check, hey, did our state change? Which of course it's true. So at the beginning, this will be called one time. Right after that, we can set state changed equal to false. The next time that state change should equal true is the next time that we trigger this not alert, right? The next time we go into this state. And the time we do that is from our searching, right? Our current state equals NBC behaviors.notAlert. Right before we switch to that state, we're going to say, hey, we're changing the state. State changed equals true. Cool. So that should make it so that we only call this coroutine one time. And to be sure that that's working, I'm going to put a debug.log back in there. What's up? We should see that what's up message only one time. Okay, here we go. What's up was called only one time. Beautiful. Now we can actually get into the topic of today's video, which is how to make our NPC pause at each waypoint position. Say we want the option as a designer to be able to only pause at the end, right? Or we might want the option of pausing between every single point. That way our designers can toggle those options on or off, and based on that bool, it'll modify how our NPC moves, giving us more variety in our NPCs. You know, I think for me, let's do more bools. Let's do bool logic, because that way in the inspector, you can easily toggle it off and on. And let's allow for two kind of pause options. So I'm going to make a private bool called pause at end, and another one, since it's the same type, pause at each waypoint. And let's go ahead and serialize the field so that, like I said, our designers can decide whether or not this is something that their NPC does. And now this is pretty simple to implement. So in our move routine, right here is where we're at the end, and right here is where we're going in between each waypoint. So as a mini challenge, what you could do is you could say if pause at end is true, wait a second. And over here, you could say if pause at each waypoint is true, wait a second. It's that simple because we've already built in the logic for where the end is and where each of the middle points are. So if you want a little mini challenge, go ahead and pause the video right here and go ahead and try to implement this pseudocode so that our NPC pauses based on those bools. And no worries if you can't figure it out, I will show you a solution right now. So it's just a simple if statement to check if pause at end. And if that is true, we're just going to yield return a new wait for seconds, and I'll just put 1.0f in there, right? And we'll do the same thing for this one. If pause at each waypoint, so if that is toggled to be true, we will yield return a new wait for seconds 1.0f. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and hit save on this and do some testing. So on our NPC on the script, you can now see there's two bools, pause at end and pause at each waypoint. I'm going to go ahead and check pause at end. So here we go. So as it's looping through here, when it gets to this waypoint 5 here in the middle, it should pause for just a second. Okay, here it comes. Here's the end. Boom, it paused. Perfect. That's all we want. Now let's go ahead and give pause at each waypoint to be true, and let's hit play. And it should pause for a second at each step along the way. Pause. Perfect. Beautiful. Another pause. Awesome. Yep, this is working exactly as expected. The last customization that we can do is simple. Let's make it maybe pause a random amount or an amount that you, the designer, could specify in the inspector. It's just a really minor change in the coroutine that we have. If you want it to just be a random amount, you could do random.range between whatever your minimum is, like 1.0 and maybe 5.0f. Random.range between 1.0f and 5.0f. So this simple change will make your NPC pause a random amount, but if you want the designer to be able to specify that, you could do a min pause and a max pause and serialize those fields. So let's go to here. Let's create a private float called min pause and max pause, and let's serialize the field. There we go. And now instead of randomly between 1 and 5, we're just going to put min pause here, and where the 1 is, we will also put min pause, and over here we have the max pause. And you could even do this further out, obviously, where you could make a min pause and max pause different if it's at the end versus if it's in between each one. I'm just going to do it like this. Sweet. Now you can see it's looking for a minimum pause amount and a maximum pause amount. If you leave these at 0, it won't pause at all. So what we could do, I'm just going to put 1 here, and the max pause is 5, and it will randomly pick between those two amounts. Cool. Okay, so it's pausing a random amount just like we expect it to, so that our player maybe has to keep on their toes a little bit more. Beautiful. Yay, this is working exactly how we wanted to. Good job in this one. In the next one, we're going to take a look at a different kind of path movement other than looping, perhaps a random path mode. Okay, see you in the next one.